Oh, thank you, Stu. So good afternoon, everyone. My name's Dane Richmond. I'm a Trade and Investment Commissioner for Austrade based here in Shanghai, China. Austrade is Australia's leading trade and investment agency, and our role really boils down to connecting Australian businesses with the world and the world with Australia. So we do that through over 80 offices that we have dotted around the world, and I'm calling you today from Shanghai in China. Here in China, fintech innovation, particularly during the coronavirus pandemic, has accelerated. We estimate around 87% of consumers regularly use some sort of a fintech service in their daily life. And by 2020, China held 24% of the market share of unicorns globally. So basically, it's the second largest market shareholder of tech unicorns in the world. So it's a very interesting dynamic innovation ecosystem that we find ourselves here in China. This makes China an interesting market for fintechs to explore, and the fintech landscape in China presents opportunities for companies. Now, of course, there are significant challenges in the global business environment right now, but that's why engaging with Austrade early on, engaging with the other stakeholders early on in your export journey is so important. And we're here to help you develop a strategy to maximize your chances of export success. And we're very lucky today. I believe my colleague, Lasia Rao, is there in the room with you, and of course Stu Keen, who's a newly minted Austrader, which is fantastic to see, embedded at Fintech Australia. So that's something we're very excited about. Today we have a great panel. So enough from me. I'll jump over and we'll have our panel introduce ourselves today. So I'd like to start by inviting Nelson Chao, who's the Chief Fintech Officer from the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. Nelson, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at the Hong Kong Monetary Authority?
Sure, thank you, Dane. Thanks for inviting me to this forum. My name is Nelson Chao. I work for the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. We set up this fintech office back in 2016 when we only have limited amount of money and limited people who run this office, and we treat ourselves as a startup within the organization, within a kind of a legacy central bank. Well, over the past couple of years, we have been witnessing a lot of changes in the industry, a lot of digital transformation happening, especially after we launched the smart banking initiative back in 2017. When we had a new licensing regime for virtual banking, also have a new financial infrastructure such as a faster payment system. So happy to discuss with the panel what is happening in Hong Kong and around the world. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Nelson, and it's great to see that startup culture permeating other organizations as well. It's fantastic. Ada Guan is the CEO and co-founder of Rich Data Co, which obviously is one of Australia's more exciting startups and companies. And so Ada, you're walking the walk. I talk about it and you do it. So please introduce yourselves to the panel and to the crowd here.
Yeah, thank you, Dane. So I'm Ada. As you can possibly tell, I actually come from China. So I come to Australia for study many years ago. So I completed my computer science in University in New South Wales. So it's great to be with you today. So my background is largely, I'm an engineer and quite specialized in computer engineering. And I've been working with very large corporation in Australia and also internationally. So I have a retail background through Woolworth, Westpac background, and then Oracle background before Rich Data Corp. Rich Data Corp is an AI company very specialized in helping lenders actually adopt AI and use it for supporting lending decisions. So we're relatively small. However, we actually have operated extensively overseas. So we operated in North America, China, Vietnam, and also in Australia. So very excited to be here today.
Thank you, Ada, and it's great to have you. Now, when it comes to talking about opportunities, you always want to talk to the people who are actually making investments, the money people. So it's really good to have Sher here, who is the founding partner of Willinder and Sher Capital. So Kurt, would you mind introducing us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Dan. Happy to meet everyone here today. It's my big pleasure being here. I'm currently actually based in Sydney, Australia. We have been operating venture capital funds mainly in 4 markets: US and Israel. We manage various funds in different markets, both in China. I would say we both have foreign currency vehicle and the renminbi vehicle in China and the overseas market. And we focusing on technology driven ventures, and also more interesting recently, we start to look at consumer brands, FMCG, everything with the lifestyle culture identity and with the cool elements. We invested a number of interesting Southern California-based consumer brand startups. For Australian, we started 2014, and currently we have around 6 companies listed on ASX. Some of them went pretty well, and some of them actually in the fintech sector. So it's again happy to be here, and it would be great to talk to other panels in the audience. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you, Kurt. And lastly, but by no means leastly, we're very pleased to have Ursula Mccormack here, who's a partner with King & Wood Mallesons. You know, lawyers make the world go round, especially in the fintech space. So Ursula, over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Great to be here. So yes, I'm a financial and data regulatory lawyer. I specialize in emerging technologies, which includes all wonderful things that large financial institutions do, but then also the weird and wonderful crypto issuers and AI companies and other innovative people around the world. I specialize in cross-border, so my focus has been Hong Kong for many years, but I do a lot of work in the region, both in terms of assisting clients access multiple markets, but also helping governments throughout the region in developing their new digital economy laws to really enable kind of safe and trusted environments for digital.
Fantastic, thank you. And it really does make me feel a little bit intimidated to be moderating this panel today, given the range of high-powered and high-qualified individuals that we have. But I'll press ahead and we'll jump into the questions, if that's okay, Stu. My first question is for Ada. You have over 20 years experience in global finance and information technology, and now you sit at the helm of one of Australia's most interesting AI companies in rich data. With Australia becoming a hotbed of fintech innovation, what advantages do we have that create opportunities here in the Greater China market?
Yeah, thank you, Dane. So, first one I think I wanted to share is we actually have, from Australia perspective, we have really good universities, and for the computer science domain, and we have some of the best universities internationally. And for us, we're partnering with UNSW, UTS, and the Sydney University for AI research, and also for behavior economics research. Some might argue in US and China, there are more AI research available. However, for a small company like us, the AI research in Australia market is actually very accessible. So by working with the universities, we were able to really gain competitive advantage. So perhaps that's the first point around the infrastructure we have in Australia is fantastic. Second one is actually we have one of the strongest financial systems and the financial sectors. So if I look back, some of the work I have done or we have done in Westpac back in 2007 at the time, we have the instant credit card origination decisioning capability. And so if you look back, that was completely leading edge at the time, and looking across, I think, Intersect in the last couple of days, we can also see tremendous amount of innovation in the Australia market. I think we should feel very proud of that and really leverage that capability. And the third one might come in a little bit as a surprise. When we interact with our customers in the China market, we have been perceived as quite neutral. So if you look at the AI capability and many of those being controlled by the technology giants in the China market, so people like Tencent, people like Ant Finance, and the things interesting interesting is they also compete with banks. So in that sense, many banks are actually a little bit reluctant to completely adopt their technology, and because they felt that potentially they can take away their customers. So if I recap the three things, that perhaps it's leveraging our research from the universities here, and leverage the innovation in Australia. And the third one actually play a neutral role and in the China market.
Fantastic, thank you. That's a really beautiful way to sum up our advantages. You've signed on major customers and partners here in mainland China. One of your partners is cloud computing and big data services provider named Inspo. And together you are assisting banks to use government data to better assess credit risk. As an Australian founder, what is the key to winning customers and partners in mainland China?
Thank you, Dane. So the first one is, first point is perhaps quite obvious, is we got to have the local presence and the local partners. So I think having a local team actually in country is tremendously important, and be able to interact with our customers, and also just be there when customer needing it is actually quite important. And having a local partner such as Inspo has been tremendously helpful to actually get access to banks. I think Inspo have around 500 banks as their existing customers. So for us, that really provided the access we can only dream of. The second point is actually around building a network and connecting with customers and the partners. Inspo actually was introduced to us through US technology companies. And the Inspo has partnership with people like Intel, Cisco, IBM, Diebold Nixdorf. And by introducing, Diebold actually introduced us. So in that sense, we benefited from the trusted relationship Inspo already have with Diebold, and we were able to build on top of the trusted relationship they already built. So I think leverage networks such as your existing partners in Australia or internationally, and leverage the Australian network, and to really tap into the China network is tremendously important. The third point is actually more around being patient. So I felt from West and the East perspective, we have a different sense around time dimension. So one of the perhaps the best news I ever read is after the Soccer World Cup, and Japan developed a strategy on how to win World Cup in 100 years. So the time dimension around East and the West is very, very different. So I think being patient and work with the local companies and the partners are tremendously important.
Absolutely. I'm patient in most things, except when I'm waiting for my food to be delivered, and then I'm obviously not as patient. But thankfully here in China, it happens pretty quickly. Nelson, Nelson, what role do regulators like HKMA play in promoting fintech innovation in Hong Kong?
We play a very interesting role. If you look at the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, we are playing both the regulator role, and at the same time, we also do market development, because we are both the central bank and regulators of banks and also payment service providers. So these two kind of, if you look at it, looks like it's conflicting with each other, because on one hand, regulator, you don't want any bad things to happen. But if you look at the central bank, it's also running, you want the market to be developed. I always use the analogy, we are like gardening the whole system. On one hand, I think you guys from Australia, you know it very well that you have your lawn to do, and you have to control pests, and you have to control the weeds. I still remember I had a garden in Dunn, and it's a pain in the leg, and it's very difficult to deal with. And so same as the financial systems. One, you don't want bad things to happen. You want to cultivate a nice garden. But at the same time, if you just don't do anything, and you won't see a vibrant ecosystem. So on the other hand, it's also important that we need to ensure that we introduce competition. So there are different colors of flowers, and so that makes the garden look nice. But of course, this is more art than science. It's sometimes how far you want to go to one extreme, because a complete free market, you will find very strange things that could happen, and that may not be good for the consumer interest.
Fantastic, and I do love that gardening analogy. I myself am also struggling to keep my garden in shape when I'm back in Australia, so I sympathise. Hong Kong has long held this prime position as a financial hub in Asia and the world. With the rapid advancement of technology, particularly in cross-border financing, what are some of the strategies that Hong Kong is adopting to maintain its position as a destination for the finance sector?
Sure. Thank you, Dan. I think in the past 2-3 years, Hong Kong has seen a lot of challenges. First is the unrest, and then we have the COVID, and you can see that our unemployment rate has gone up historical high, and the latest figures are around 7%. But for decades, it's about 2%. So all these challenges are real. We have to admit that we have these challenges. But of course, Hong Kong, people of my generation has gone through multiple iterations, and we have gone through the ups and downs, and for example, the Asia financial crisis, and then followed by the financial tsunami back in 07-08. So all these challenges has come to us, and we when I look back in history, looks like there are some things that are transitory, and some things are more kind of long-lasting. So we will have to look at the strength of Hong Kong. If you look at data, we have seen the early sign that we are going through a decent recovery, especially if you look at the Q1 GDP. But of course, you see a very strange thing. Unemployment rate is still high. Why is that? It's because of when you talk to people in the finance world or in the tech sector, actually they are still very good. I mean, they get paid very well. Sometimes you see they change jobs and get pay rise. But on the other hand, the servicing industry, like the tourism industry, all that has been affected quite a lot. So back to your question, financial center, I think we have some very good fundamentals. For example, our geographical location, it cannot be changed, right? It's long-term. We are in between China, we are at the border, and we are also facing the West. I think we should continue to leverage this good position, because from flight time within 5 hours, you basically can reach a huge population. And population, if you look carefully, are the high growth population. This is the region where you can find the most rapid increase in middle class. So I would believe with the introduction of Wealth Connect pretty soon, you see huge opportunity in the Greater Bay Area. I hope to invite more people like Ada to come over to set up an office in Hong Kong and to serve the Greater Bay Area. Of course, geographical advantage is one thing. Another advantage, I think, is we have a lot of great people, a lot of professional services like Ursula. We have been here. I think a lot of lawyers, a lot of accountants, and all that are helpful to the financial system. Of course, the other thing is that's where the money is here. It is where the capital is here. In the past, 11 years, you can see the IPO. We ranked like first in 7 years. I think these are all the fundamentals. But we have to also look into our weakness to see how we can improve ourselves to attract more talents and especially tech companies. We have been strong in finance, but I think we need more. We need to work harder on inviting the tech people to come over.
Absolutely, and I think that spirit of always improving obviously will serve you well in the future. Never be satisfied with what you have. It's always pushing forward. So that's great to hear. Thank you very much, Nelson. Kurt, you've been an active investor since, I believe, 2007. Companies you have invested in include Sezzle and Airtasker. But when you look at the fintech sector, what are you looking for when investing?
Thank you, Dan. Fintech more and more has becoming a hot sector, obviously in Australian market, but in the meantime, of course, we look at the global markets. So the digitalization of the financial industry has actually accelerated a lot for the sector, especially also for the sake of COVID pandemic. And I would like to divide the opportunity in two big sectors. One is B2B, another is B2C. For B2B, we tend to use what we call it reverse problem solving methodology. So we look at the demands for those big financial institutions, for instance. So we look at those B2B like software, SaaS, whatever, cloud-based kind of companies, which can help the big insurance and the financial institutions help with their efficiency and the security issues. We look at this kind of opportunities more. We look at what all these big companies need, and then we look for the opportunities. So that's why we call it reverse. So for B2C, which I'm more familiar, as I have been in China's internet industry for 20 years. So I'm more familiar with B2C. So for B2C, we look at opportunities which can usually easily to find a market penetration, and it can then, of course, soon be scalable. For instance, in Australia, we have seen the success of company like Afterpay, Zip, and we happen to invest its competitor in US, which also happened to be listed on Australia Stock Exchange, which has been, I was told by my banking contacts, this has been the #1 listing from a foreign company on Australian Stock Exchange ever. We are very proud of that. And of course, when a lot of people are talking about when you're doing VCs, you look at people. We do look at team. That's the #1 thing, no matter it's fintech or anything else. So the great team means many things. That means the vision and the strong leadership to build something revolutionary, and the skills to turn the vision into reality, the execution. And of course, we also look at their special expertise in the area, in the domain, and we also very much look at their passion and their guts for what they're up to. And in general, we also love to look at fintech ventures if they happen to have some other elements, for instance, as Ada mentioned before, AI, blockchain, cybersecurity elements, combined with the fintech mission, we would love to see that kind of opportunity. And of course, when you look at Australia, we usually look at to see if the venture could have a potential to either go to the US market, usually that's the way, or to the Asia, mainly to Chinese market, maybe. So we look at that. So the scalability. So basically that's the things we've been looking for the opportunities in this sector.
Fantastic. And I think that's a really good sort of overview about, if people are thinking about how to structure their business and what sort of attributes to build in, that's very good advice. Now, Kurt, you've got the benefit of working, obviously, you're now in Sydney, but you've had decades of experience in China. How does the VC fundraising process differ in China and in Australia?
Well, this is actually a frequently asked question. Well, from the macro level, I see they're actually very similar. As I mentioned, as VCs, we look at market, we look at people. The market needs to be scalable, need to be big enough, and the people need to be right. #1 thing, they need to handle with the competition. But I do see some little difference. So from macro level, of course, #1, as I mentioned many times, In China and US, we always mention people, people, people. Here in Australia, of course, they also look at people for the team, but you can see both VCs or the venture entrepreneurs in their pitch deck, and when they pitch, they actually do not talk a lot about the team. They tend to talk about, you know, the technology advantage, what they offer, how they solve the problem. There's nothing wrong, but I could feel a little bit weight difference. I mean, in China, you tend to talk who you are, what did you do before, kind of thing more, because that's always something VC are very interested. Australia, probably we're more focusing on the thing we are doing, kind of thing. And in China, for instance, and the US as well, usually you will talk about competition, because everything in China that's going to be big, you will find a competitor easily, and a very good competitor in a way. In Australia, sometimes we are in a lucky country. So if you are keen to do something, you find no competitors. That is good and bad. So this is a little bit different. And also because Chinese market is big, I mean, the ecosystem for VC and startups is bigger. Australia has been growing a great way too, but still relatively small compared to China, US. So that said, in China, for the big deal, they always use a financial advisory service, use the FA. While in Australia, usually entrepreneurs talk to investors directly, or they talk through some referrals. But in China, the financial advisory for venture capital investment is huge. They're huge. I mean, we used to joke about this, if they do big deals, I mean, for fundraising for entrepreneurs, they actually earn good money than VCs sometimes. For VCs, we need to wait like 5 to 8 years to be exited, but FA, they get cash out right away. So that's another thing I found different. So, and also in China, sometimes if the team is really good, VCs will try to even pitch to invest into, which also start to happen here in Australia, but still just only maybe a few deals. In China, you can easily find a lot of deals VC are actually trying to pitch to get in. I mean, for instance, for some of the people, if we heard they're doing some startups, we'll say, well, let me in no matter what you do, kind of thing. Okay, that's the thing. But in Australia, still, we take serious due diligence for whoever, for whatever. We will take very serious due diligence for startup. That's another difference. But of course, nothing wrong with that. I won't say which way is better, but it's just as we are talking about the difference. So I'm trying to see some of the different parts. So that's another different thing. So yeah. So anyway, so that's something I have been observed. But yeah, anyway, end of the day, good entrepreneurs, they're very rare. They tend to be similar. They have the guts, they have the vision. They're very hungry. They're very smart. They're very good at execution. So these are all the same everywhere. So yeah, thank you.
That's great to hear, Kurt. And I think you remind me of one of the stories when I first came to China. I brought an Australian tech company here, and the VC guy was asking how much, and the person was trying to explain how much the price point was for the product and how they could scale it. And at the end, he got frustrated. He goes, no, how much for your company? Like, I want to buy the whole thing. And so it's a very different mindset here. So we spent about 45 minutes.
Decision making, yeah, sometimes.
Very quick, yeah. And Australians are definitely sort of different pace of doing things. So I can definitely, I've experienced what you're talking about there. Ursula, what are some of the common legal pitfalls that Australian fintech should look out for when entering the Greater China markets?
Yeah, well, a great question. I mean, I think the first starting point is just understanding that there are multiple markets and multiple jurisdictions within Greater China, and the laws are different, sometimes very significantly. So if we look at virtual asset, crypto regulation, you have everything from a complete ban, right through to quite a favorable environment that has limited regulation. And then in some cases, we have laws in certain markets that really far exceed what you might even see in the US or in Europe. And Hong Kong, for example, was one of the leading jurisdictions in relation to its AML regime back in 2012. And that comes as a surprise sometimes when people see markets that appear very free, very sort of favorable, with large opportunities, that indeed there's a lot of structure. The other thing is really that regulatory attitudes and priorities are different. And so really making sure that sort of you sort of understand that that's sort of a key thing. And so, you know, what I would say around pitfalls is that it's about approach more than it is about a specific item. And so key pitfall number one for me is not doing your homework. And what I mean by that is, you know, looking at regulatory websites, look at law firm publications, look at Austrade's website. There's actually great information there I've seen. And also fintech associations and other associations that are on the ground and regularly publishing. Pitfall number two is not asking for recommendations. And I think great comment earlier, you know, Asia is, and Greater China included in that, is about relationships. And so if you can get those established, those linkages early, you will find that doors open because people are happy to speak to contacts, of warm contacts. And then linked with that, pitfall number three is not asking for help. Speaking to lots of people, asking for preliminary calls. I do this session with some of the engineering university students about working with lawyers. And one of the first things, you know, I say to them is that, you know, every lawyer worth their money will have a free call with you up front to give you the lay of the land. And so really try and tap into those sort of sources of expertise. The fourth is not tapping into some established channels that are available for help as well. So in Hong Kong, we have Invest Hong Kong, there's the HKMA and the SFC Fintech contact points, and also the Fintech associations. They're there to help you. That's their job. Number five is not looking for the opportunities. There are all the time pilot projects, collaborations, new tax concessions or other types of opportunities that open up. And it is really useful to look for those opportunities because they can provide really good windows or special sort of corridors that might not otherwise be available, particularly for interesting and innovative projects. And then finally, I'd say that the key pitfall I would see is assuming that more is always more. So I see a lot of new market entrants into Hong Kong and generally looking at expanding in multiple regions. But generally everyone wants to go global. And if you want to go global, that requires a lot of work and a lot of structuring. Being really precise about what the value proposition is, where you want to go, and then working through the specifics of that can be very important. And the more is more sort of pitfall I would also extend to things like, you know, collecting as much data as you possibly can with your product, or, you know, really trying to achieve everything under the sun. You know, the more complex, and I think Kurt speak to this better than I, but sometimes, you know, the proposals I see are just so convoluted and complex. And really don't discern a specific pain point and a specific sort of project plan, that it's very difficult to assist someone to execute that all in one go. So there's some key pitfalls I would raise.
Oh, thank you. And I think you do Austrade work better than most Austraders, so that was fantastic advice. Now, as one of the Financial Times top legal innovators of 2018, and I promised that I would embarrass you with that little tidbit at the start of the question, you're at the forefront of how technology is changing cross-border finance. Given King & Wood Mallison's involvement in cutting-edge techs through, say, for example, brokering of ICOs, how do you see the future of fintech in Hong Kong and Greater China, and what trends should we be on the lookout for?
Yeah, great question. So right now we're seeing a lot of innovation around payments and payments infrastructure and money itself. So, you know, really something to keep a very close eye on is the rollout of China's central bank digital currency, as well as really great projects in Hong Kong that really are about cross-border movement, but also other linkages throughout Asia. So faster payments systems and linkages that are being established by Singapore and Thailand, for example. So payments and money is definitely a sort of a key point there. And that links to initiatives like virtual banks, for example. So moving more into the digital arena, getting the flow of funds and value moving more swiftly, definitely a key trend. The next one is platforms. So one-stop shop, big tech, behemoths. We're seeing that the growth of that throughout Asia. But like everywhere in the world, also a lot of pressure on those platforms, for potentially, too much stifling of competition, getting too big, perhaps not handling data in the way that they ought to, and needing a lot of regulatory licenses. But platforms and really becoming part of the sort of the daily habit for individuals is a big trend. The next one is data-driven economy. So a lot of the work that I do is on data and data flows. But that really means that there's a need for really good governance around things like analytics, risk modeling, lead generation, all of that good stuff that can use data. The next one is around blockchain and virtual assets. Lots of new law, lots of really cool pilot projects around renovating and innovating traditional instruments like bonds. And it's a great project working on the HKMA on that side. But, really lots going on in the virtual asset sector. And then finally in automation, and that's everything from robo-advisory through to automation, vehicles, but that is an ongoing story and quite a lot of movement in that zone. But finally, I'd echo what Kurt says, which is really just making sure that whatever it is, it's about solving pain points. And sometimes that means focusing on the underlying infrastructure and the assistance and support services to this new sector that actually has the strongest value proposition.
Fantastic, thank you. And I must say, I was very surprised. I was in a convenience store the other day here, and I saw the sticker up for the digital RMB saying we accept the digital RMB, and I was like, oh, it's real, it's here, and you can actually spend it. So so you can really see that the time frame from when things are kind of floated to announced to implemented to you can buy a coffee with, it's very, very quick indeed. So that's very exciting, and thank you very much for your insights. I want to throw this question out to Nelson and Kurt, but also to the rest of the panel. How has COVID impacted the adoption of fintech in the Greater China markets? Maybe Nelson, if you can share your experience from Hong Kong's perspective first.
Sure. I think I can talk about the behavioral change of three groups of people. The first are the consumer level. Because of COVID, and people tend to prefer electronic payment methods. So that's why over the past 18 months, we have seen a huge increase in digital payment. So in the old days, all those tools, the e-wallets are available, but there is still a small group of people who are unwilling to use electronic payment. But COVID has really changed their behavior. And you can witness it through the uptake of faster payment registration from 6 million to 8 million pre-post COVID, and you can also see the transaction volumes is increasing every day. And one of the study, the 2021 Global Payment Report by WorldPay, it actually said predict, and in 2024. There's only 1.6% of in-store transaction using cash. So that's more on the payment side and the consumer side. They have started to adopt all these digital solutions. That's payment, but of course e-commerce and other things like ordering using their apps has been increased a lot. And once these people have experienced the convenience of digitalization, they will not change back. I mean, so we believe this is a sort of a permanent change of individuals' behavior. Another group of people are the merchants. As you can see from the early in the onset of the COVID, some retailers cannot stand those challenges, and they have to close down their business. But for those who stay, they choose other means to deliver their services. Of course, they started to work with the app by a third party to receive order. And also they work with the e-commerce providers. I used to live in North America, and I'm an Amazon guy, And when I came back to Hong Kong, there is no such thing. And because I think it's also behavior problem, because we are so close to the groceries and everything, so we just do it ourselves. But of course, in Australia, definitely different. You have you have to drive for a while before you get to the supermarket. But COVID has also changed the way that these smaller merchants, they rely on the e-commerce platform to deliver their services. Now, when I get back home, I see this truck from one of the major e-commerce providers are there. So I believe they're doing pretty well, and that's more on the corporate side. They are digitalizing their service delivery channels. And lastly, the financial sector. I mentioned earlier that they have started, the faster payment system. They also started the virtual banking. And the virtual bankings, the new licenses has created competitions among the incumbents and the challengers. And that's a good thing. That's exactly the competition we want to see, because only when you have competition, you will, both incumbents and the challengers will provide better service to their customers, because they have to compete against each other. So we are seeing so all banks, basically, if you talk to them, they started to say they are fintech companies, and of course they want the valuations of the tech companies, but on the other hand, I think they also start hiring the new people like the chief innovation officers, chief whatever digitalization officer. I think Ursula knows a lot of them, and you started to see this change of mindset. And altogether, all these three groups of people, if you look at them, that's Hong Kong. But of course, your question is Greater China. I think Kurt can help me. I think China is more advanced. They used to be this high already. So I don't know whether COVID has made them even higher or such like that. Back to you, Dane.
Yes, Kurt. Really keen for your thoughts. Ada and Ursula as well. Yeah.
This is a very interesting question, because during the whole COVID time, I'm actually out of China. I'm in Sydney, but of course, I'm still talking to my colleagues, friends, families there all the time. So as Nelson just put, this actually the COVID actually further strengthened the adoption of fintech in China even better. I mean, of course, as Nelson said, it's already one of the most developed country for fintech, maybe for the internet, everything. It actually, as you are in China, you should know that fintech actually played a very, very critical role in China's containment of COVID pandemic. I mean, both Alipay and WeChat payment had very, very high penetration. Everyone basically use them both. And I know some of the people that even have more than one Alipay or WeChat payment account. And okay, that's it. So even also for business. So I know, again, this is funny. I didn't use it as I'm in Australia, but I know that Alipay trying to use that traffic light system, like the green and yellow and the red code kind of thing. So if your code is red, then you need to be staying for 14 days, for instance. For green, then you are fine. Then for yellow, probably you will be staying at home or in some places for 7 to 14 days. That's what I heard. So I don't have the first-hand experience, unfortunately. But that's the thing. I mean, this actually all help them great way in China, helping to cope with the pandemic thing in China. And so now, of course, basically China is basically pretty much okay with COVID, but I believe the fintech will be a big part in everyone's life further. Again, as everyone can see, it's just everywhere. Ubiquitous in a word. And another thing that you guys mentioned, I would like to say about China is that actually speeding up the expansion of the proposed, as you and other panelists mentioned, the digital currency, the DCEP stuff. I think they are very, very bullish on that. I believe that's another thing, and can help create a more how to say, cashless society in a way. Touchless payment. Is this also actually helped in a great way during the COVID time? And because this fintech system is not only a payment system, it's like basically a digital logistics system. I mean, it's easy. It's connected to all kinds of service like e-commerce, like the how you pay your bills. Everything is on your fintech portal, like WeChat payment or Alipay, everything. So people at the very beginning, of course, they don't know how to do, but soon they know how to work things out. I know that all my previous neighbors and friends in Beijing, they kind of had not that affected life during the COVID time. I know that Wuhan at the very beginning, they did experience certain difficulties, but soon everything has been worked out. I would say fintech system and the whole internet infrastructure has been playing significant role in this. So yeah, I would be happy to say that this will be more development, of course. No reason for stop. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. And as we say in China, when you leave the party, may your health code always be green, which is a new saying. So I believe that my good friends and colleagues, Stuart, Annika, and Lassie are in the room there. Do we have any questions from the floor? Hello.
These mics, so if anyone would like to ask a question to any of the panelists, they can.
Panelists, my name's Peter Jones from Nemo Industries online lending platform. We engaged through Taipei a couple of years ago in relation to creating relationships. As you said, it's creating the relationship is as important in just arriving up when you want to do business. But we've found obviously over the last 12 months that to be increasingly difficult. So with, as we move over the next 12 months and the world hopefully opening up more, what's your recommendations in dealing with the, we have Hong Kong, we have Taipei, we have mainland China. What's your, what would be your recommendations in dealing with the various regions?
So from my perspective, and I think I could definitely throw to Ursula as well, who would have really a lot more sort of specific advice. But if you see my good friends and colleagues in the room, Stuart, Annika, and Lassia, I would engage with them very early. We're very sort of bullish on fintech here in Austrade at the moment. So I'll be pushing more and more resources from my end, and I'm responsible for our agenda across those different areas. So please do talk to Stuart in particular early on, and we'd love to talk to you about your plans for the region. But Ursula, you're the expert here in sort of those three regions. So I'm happy to throw to you.
Oh look, I can't add anything. I think that's that's the best starting point for sure. And then establishing those linkages one by one. But I think very much kind of working out, really getting a sense of the idiosyncrasies of each market and their priorities. And for example, in the Greater Bay Area, for example, each city really has and will have a number of key focus areas. So being really clear about what aligns best to your business and the pain points that it will solve. So, whether it's for Hong Kong, like as an international financial centre, if that's Macau as sort of a media and entertainment hub, diversifying, of course. But I think it's really finding, picking and choosing those opportunities and those local market specialities that will be important early on.
If I can jump in for, I think if he is talking about the Greater China market, definitely he will need someone like yourself and people like Ursula. But if it's only talking about Hong Kong, there's always help from Invest Hong Kong and the also the Fintech Association. You know, Greater China market, you know, you have 4 different jurisdictions and also 4 currencies and all running different things. So depending on how aggressive your client is, yeah. If it is just for Hong Kong, they can go straight to Invest Hong Kong.
I just, wanted to sort of echo, people, I've just always been floored by how much people want to help one another and establish those linkages and find those mechanisms. I do ask, it's the best advice I can give is to ask around, get the next linkage, ask who's the next person to speak to. But yeah, Invest Hong Kong, yeah, absolutely wonderful, as are the HKMA, of course.
And early, I always like to hear of, I like to talk to people early rather than after they've gone and done a bunch of things and then come to us and say, help. It's always best to talk to you very early on in your journey if possible. Stu, do we have time for another question? I know that I know I've got a lot out of this. I have a million questions, but I don't want to be greedy.
Hi guys, this is Kevin from QB Ventures. So in my previous slides, I was in UBS M&A team over in Hong Kong. And what we've seen, I guess, from that end is that there's a bit of lack of trust in terms of when foreign investors invest in companies that's in China, that operates in China. And I guess just one, and this is back in like 2015, 2016. I guess in the world of ventures, was investing in startups. That's foreign ventures investing in startups in China. Is it relatively friendly market, or is there still a bit of friction in terms of due diligence?
So did you want, I guess if you wanted to direct your question, if you want me to sort of direct my question to one of the specific, I mean, obviously I'm not the best qualified person to answer that question here, but I would say that trust is built through patience and as sort of Ursula said, the building of those relationships. No one's going to trust you overnight. It takes time, but maybe Kurt and Ursula, particularly around sort of the trust piece, how would you building that trust, particularly when we can't travel and things are difficult?
I'll hand this one to Kurt.
Yeah. So yes, I agree with what Dan said. It's always about trust and the time and patience and relationship. And same thing as me. I'm from China. The other way, I started investment in Australia 2014 and started US in 2012, started investing in Israel in 2015. So basically, for me, I think it's all the same. It's always about try to find your first trusted partner locally. Then if these people you can trust 100% and he knows the local market, this is always a turnkey a solution for you. I mean, always try to find a local partner. For instance, for us, we have good partners in US, in California, and here in Australia. And then we have very good trusted partners in Tel Aviv. So that's how we work things out. We always try to talk to our trusted partners locally. I think that's one fundamental way to solve the problem. And of course, it's always good to talk to institutions like Austrade, Lending Pad, and of course, talking to people like Ursula for legal advices all the time. Yes, that's it. But people is number one.
Thank you. And I think that's that 100%. And that's really, I think, reflective of Ada's story as well, that trusted local partner kind of opening up a lot of doors and really sort of helping shine here. We've used up all our time, unfortunately.
Being Dane dropped.
Did anyone have any final questions?
Ada, were you about to say something?
Sorry, I just wanted to add one point, I think, to the previous question from the founder perspective. From my perspective, I felt the chemistry between the investors and the funders are tremendously important. So in many ways, the region play a role, but the chemistry, the connections between the funders and the investors, I think are tremendously important. I think that cut across the locations and cut across the industries. Yeah, so just want to add that
100%, I couldn't agree more. And I'd just like to thank you.
Did you have something?
No, that's it.
Hi everyone, it's Stu from Fintech Australia. We have no further questions from our side, so we just wanted to say a really big thank you from everyone in the at Intersect conference. Thank you so much for your time. We'll be sure to send you a recording of the session, but your insights have been much appreciated. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yeah.